Good afternoon. Welcome to the Dfinity 401k class, day 4. Can't believe it's day 4. Hope you're learning a lot during this 401k class. We've got a really good lineup for today, and my name is Elke Gibba. I'm Director of Marketing, and I'm here just to say welcome. We're glad you're here. We will be starting in just a moment so we can let everyone join. Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, both our role, Dfinity's role, and how we keep your information safe, and also how we'd like for you to communicate with us to keep your content and your data safe, and also Census, preparing your census and getting it ready. So it's going to be a good session today. Thank you so much for joining. We will be taking questions. So if you have any for our speakers today, please use the Q&A window at the bottom of the Zoom window, and then you'll be able to submit your questions. We'll be monitoring those, and we'll be responding. If we don't get to all of the questions, we will respond to them via email at a later date. So just be aware of that. The other thing I would tell you is that all of our sessions are recorded, and we will post them back to the website where you came today to access the 401k class. And we will email you when those sessions are available for replay. So I think we've covered the incidentals and the housekeeping issues. So now I will pass it over to Tom and Terry to talk to you about Dfinity's cybersecurity plan.
Well, thank you, Elke, and welcome everyone. My name is Tom Gaillard. I'm Dfinity's CEO, and I'm joined by our Chief Information Officer, Terry Bennett. As Elke said, and as you probably know by signing up, that we're going to have a little chat, 15, 20 minutes or so, an informal discussion around cybersecurity. So before giving some introductory comments on that, I just wanted to briefly introduce Terry, who has decades of experience as a senior technology executive at a number of firms, including Transamerica, American Fidelity Assurance, and Fidelity Security Light. He's been involved in this arena for decades, and he's worked with us for a number of years, really shaping and enforcing Dfinity's own information security posture. So thank you, Terry, for joining me. As for me, I've been with Dfinity as CEO for 4 or 5 years now, really since inception. Prior to working at Dfinity, I was with a publicly traded Bottomline Technologies, which was a regulated financial technology vendor operating globally. And there, among other things, I was responsible for our global payments and global electronic invoicing operations, which put me right in front of our own information security on a global basis within a regulated industry. So spent a lot of time on this topic, both Terry and I have, over many, many years. So Lisa, if you could go to the next slide, and we'll kick off before we have a little chat and take any questions that you have. By first just asking ourselves, why is there all this fuss over cybersecurity, and what does it mean for us in the retirement industry? Well, first of all, as you know, we all work with, and when I say we here, I don't mean just Dfinity, I mean you as plan sponsors and those who work with retirement plans. Number one, we have personally identifiable information, or PII. This is information the bad guys like to have and sell. Secondly, we don't have it just for one participant. Lisa, if you can click the advance, but we have it for many, many hundreds, thousands of participants. Within our average company, you might have a few dozen participants. We as Dfinity have hundreds of thousands of records. So that's a lot of information there to store safely. Third, there's a lot of money involved. Overall, the retirement industry comprises something like $9.3 trillion of assets. That's trillion with a T. So it's a lot of money combined with this identifiable information. And finally, fourth, historically, some of this information hasn't been necessarily locked up. And what that means is that the bad guys are attracted to this like bees to honey. So that's why the fuss is involved. Now, if you can advance this next slide, Lisa. One of the things that's changed, though, because some of that's been true for a while, one of the things that's changed is that in the old days, I'm speaking not too long ago, the most common sort of retirement industry fraud was an individual who impersonates a participant and attempts to receive loans or distributions from that participant's account. So this would be the stealing of an individual's information, perhaps sending in a fax, perhaps calling into a helpline, and trying to get money, treating that account as an ATM. That's what you see on the left. The industry and companies have found ways to combat that, if not eliminate it. It still goes on. What's changed, though, more recently is that on the right-hand side, what you see is the rise of companies, individuals who are really trying to break into an entire system. They're doing that so that they can access not just one person's account, but many, many accounts, and try to do this on a large scale. So that's a new and ever-present threat to the industry that we're seeing more and more, not just we at Dfinity, but really across the community. So that's driving a lot of the concerns about cybersecurity more recently. If you can advance to the next slide. The Department of Labor, which is one of the two entities that governs the retirement industry, is taking notice. And after many years of pretty much silence on the issue, just this year, about 6 months ago, they came out with two different guidance, I guess you would call it. You see them here: tips for hiring a service provider with strong cybersecurity practices, and a second document, cybersecurity program best practices. Both of these came out in April. In our view, they were long overdue. They were giving guidance on how companies and service firms can protect against the sorts of threats that we're seeing. I would encourage you to look for them, find them, read them. They're actually not that hard to read. They're remarkably brief, concise. They're written for a layperson, and they make a lot of sense. So while the service provider tips, for example, don't all apply to a third-party administrator like Dfinity, many of the points do. And what we would encourage you to do is gain an understanding of these so that you can help keep your plans secure. And that's really what the topic of the rest of this afternoon's about. So I won't talk too much more about this at this point, but be aware that they exist. Certainly we can help you find these documents, but a simple Google search for DOL cybersecurity will bring them up for you. Okay, so why don't we switch over to a little Q&A. And while Terry and I do a Q&A of each other, as Elke said, if you've got questions you'd like to address, just use the chat or Q&A feature below. Terry, I'd like you to start out perhaps by telling us, what is it that Dfinity focuses on with regard to information security? What do you think are the areas of focus, and where have we worked hard to tighten things?
We've taken a lot of different approaches, a lot of different pieces of this, because security has been a priority for us since the very beginning. For example, we source our applications, our software, from some of the largest financial technology services vendors in the industry. Where possible, we license that on a subscription basis so that it's managed by those vendors. Each of them has very strict security assessments in their software and their cloud environments. And they have third parties who conduct risk assessments. And we also assess the vendor's risk ourselves. We've taken our information assets, we've moved them into a highly secure cloud-based environment. We have engaged a national IT managed services provider to keep our software, our network, our whole technology infrastructure up to date with the latest cybersecurity patches. One of the reasons we chose this particular IT managed service provider is that they have a dedicated security operations center that's tasked with monitoring our systems around the clock. And then the individuals that man that particular center stay abreast of emerging technologies and threats. They actually participate in InfraGuard, which is a partnership between the FBI and the members of the private sector to talk about ongoing cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities and things like that. In addition, we engage a third-party cybersecurity firm at least annually to attempt to hack into our system, just like a criminal would do. If they find any weaknesses, we work to correct those. And last, but certainly not least, the other thing I'd like to emphasize is that we recognize that in security, for Dfinity, and honestly for any company, employees are the weakest link. We conduct mandatory security awareness training for every employee each month of the year. In addition, we do random phishing email tests to each employee every week. If an employee does happen to click on the link in one of these tests, they undergo additional security training. So as you see, we have a big emphasis on that. But Tom, let me ask you a question. Every minute or every dollar that Dfinity, or for that matter, any company, spends on security, that's time and money that takes away from what you can spend on growing the company. How does a CEO really make decisions on something like this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Terry. As a retirement services company, we have hundreds of professionals, and their focus in their professional life is on actuarial work, on plan administration work, on tax law, on ERISA law. That's the focus of our skill set, really. And so this information security piece is a little bit over to one side. Part of my job as CEO and part of our collective responsibility within the retirement industry space, however, is to recognize that we're responsible for our plan participants' retirement savings. So that's not just the participants who are logged into our systems, but also their dependents. So it's hundreds of thousands, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who really rely on us to keep their information and their assets safe for their retirement. So to me, it's not a question of whether to spend or not. It's table stakes to spend to do the sorts of programs that you've implemented. And then the question becomes, how much more should we spend? Where are the areas of weakness? And you talked about a couple of things that we use to try to leverage our dollars. One is to work with major providers who we audit and confirm that they're following best practice security. That makes our job a lot easier if we know that they're doing the work. Number two, working with our employees to make sure that their sensitivities are raised on this. And that's really part of this discussion, frankly, because our employees can't do their job without getting this information and sharing it from their clients. So it's just it's an ongoing question, how much to spend. We spend millions each year on information security. We think we're hitting the right amount. We think that we're doing the right things, but part of our job is to continue to engage with industry professionals to see what else might be out there, what threats exist, and how we might strengthen our defenses against that. So, which kind of leads me, Terry, to a question that might be useful for the people on the call to hear. If plan sponsors are similar to what I just described, engaged in businesses that have nothing at all to do with information technology or cybersecurity, and they're confused about where to start, what advice would you give them as a CIO to say, here's kind of a roadmap that you should follow to get involved with increasing your cybersecurity defenses? Where should they start?
You know, one of the first things I would recommend is recognize the potential risk. One of the challenges a lot of companies have is they think, I'm too small, or I don't have anything that anybody would want to take. And that's absolutely not true anymore. Cybersecurity, hacking, ransomware, all of these affect firms of all sizes. And one of the things I think we need to realize sometimes is that most small companies are much easier targets than the large companies. And so the bad guys are targeting the smaller companies an awful lot of time. Cybercrimes actually become just a huge business. In fact, we could go out today and we could say we want to hire hacking as a service or ransomware as a service. We don't even have to have expertise in that. I could go get it to hack one of our competitors if that's what we wanted to do. There was a study recently done by IBM and Ponemon that found the average cost of a data breach this past year or this year was $4.24 million. Within financial services, it's even higher. It's $5.72 million. So it costs an awful lot, and people need to recognize that. We need to recognize that our employees are the first line of defense. Make sure that they're aware of what the risks are. Your employees are going to follow the lead of your managers. Talk to the employees about the importance of cybersecurity. Help them recognize that they almost have to be a human firewall, if you will, for your company, and educate them on a regular basis, at least quarterly, about what's going on in the world as far as cyber risk. Mm-hmm. Look at your risk. Have you got servers or PCs that are not up to date, that the latest security patches haven't been installed, old versions of software. And the last one I really want to emphasize is if some of your information is stored or processed by a vendor, or if you send information to a vendor like you do to a TPA, what would happen to your company if that vendor's hacked? Recognize that that's a risk for your company as well. And so engage with that vendor, ask questions, and find out what they're doing to protect your information.
Mm-hmm. That's good. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking about my own experience. I think we've all had the experience where someone, often from Nigeria, emails out of the blue and it identifies himself as someone who happens to have 10, 20, $30 million and would really like your assistance in getting it out of the country. Those sorts of email frauds are really easy to see through. However, in recent years, the fraudsters have become a lot more sophisticated. I know that in my experience, we have had people impersonating me with emails that look very much like they came from me, asking our finance team to send millions of dollars to somewhere else. So Terry, one of the things I think we'll be talking about later this afternoon is how do we work together? But what's your advice for plan sponsors who might receive an odd-looking email, whether in fact, maybe it's from Dfinity, which is a firm that they're used to doing business with, but something about it looks odd. Do you have any tips for, how people should address those sorts of questions?
I think a lot of it depends on what approach you want to take. If it's something that's fairly obvious and you're not worried about anybody else in your company clicking on it, personally, I just delete it. I think that makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that you are concerned about someone clicking on, for example, something that came from your CEO or from a CFO saying, "Oh, would you send me this information or send this money over here or anything like that?" The answer really is to report it to your IT department, whether it's a managed service provider, an outsourced one, or to your IT department, because they really need to take a look at that. It could be very expensive to your company if somebody's actually clicking on it. Never click on a link within an email that is unsolicited that you don't know what it's going to be. You can hover over that link and see whether where that's pointing to. Make sure you're doing things like that.
Mm-hmm. I guess the other point might be that if you get an email, even from someone who appears to be a trusted person, that you didn't expect it, no harm in calling the person by phone. Sending an email back to that person doesn't do you much good, right? Because if it's a fraudster, they're just going to pretend to be the person. But call them by an unknown phone number, and that's another way to weed it out. That's relatively simple.
That's a very good point. Or you could send them an email, but don't reply to the email that you received.
Yeah.
Go back to your regular email address that you've got for them, mm-hmm. and send it. But even then, you have to be aware that the hacker may have taken over that person's email account.
Yeah. So phone calls are always good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One other question: many of our clients are smaller firms who don't have an IT, in-house IT, and may or may not have an MSP, which is the term that I think you've used. So where might they start if they just wanted to get an initial assessment of risks for their firm?
I would look for a reputable IT service provider. A lot of times they're called a managed service provider, but okay. Look for one that is going to evaluate your technologies and make recommendations. You don't have to hire them on a permanent basis. I mean, they could come in there and just look at things and give you recommendations, and then you use that to prioritize your actions to improve your security. Mm-hmm. There is a cost, but it's relatively small, and we have to recognize this is a very critical investment that you need to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think another is, we've talked several times about raising the security awareness of your employees. There's good vendors out there offering web-based security training for a very reasonable cost. In addition, the National Institute of Standards and Technology website, the NIST.gov, has a list of free and low-cost security training resources they might want to look at. Hmm. And lastly, go to your financial services partners or the vendors that you have business with. Ask them, if you're talking about financial services advisors or you're talking about financial service partners, ask your TPA, ask your financial advisor for their written response to the DOL guidelines that you mentioned earlier. They should have that readily available to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess one final point I would make is that just as the fraudsters' tools and the hackers' tools have gotten more sophisticated, so have the industry tools. So it's easier and generally less expensive now and more effective than it would have been a decade ago to kind of raise your defenses against these sorts of things, right?
Very true.
Yeah, good. Well, good. Thank you, Terry, for your time. We're on. We're up. We need to follow up by introducing Philip Epling to talk a bit. But I do appreciate everyone's interest. Terry, thank you for your time and expertise. If you have questions about this, specifically around Dfiniti's posture or about what else you might do, feel free to reach out to your retirement plan consultant, and they will either address your question directly or get it over to Terry, and he'll work with you. So again, thanks so much. And this is a journey, and we'll help you along the way. And now, Philip, over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Terry. That was a good conversation. I'm going to set up my slideshow here. So I believe everyone should be seeing my screen now. So my presentation today is going to be kind of building a bit on what Terry and Tom talked about, specifically working with Dfinity to help keep your plan information secure. So what do we mean by secure? Typically what that means is we are talking about data, and we can break down data into a couple of broad categories. The most important one that we deal with is what's known as personally identifiable information, or PII. That's information that can be used to directly or indirectly identify a person. When this information gets compromised, you have potential consequences, sometimes legal, depending on how it was breached or taken. So it's very important that you keep this information secured, both when you have it and when you're sending it to other people. And real quick, we're going to talk about what direct PII is. That's information that can be immediately used to identify a person. So things like name, social security number, address, phone number, things that are unique to a person. We also have what's known as indirect, which is any other information that when combined together can be used to identify a person. So if I have somebody's date of birth, the name of their employer, their compensation amount, I can use those things, stitch them together, and identify who that person is, which makes that personally identifiable once you combine them. Another category of data that is important is confidential information. This is stuff that is less severe than the personally identifiable information if it gets breached, but it's still vital to your business and still causes harm if it's leaked or stolen. This can be things that are, if it's out there, your competitors might gain an advantage over you, or it could harm your business's reputation, or it could just upset your employees. We obviously don't want to have all of your rank and file employees seeing a list of everyone's compensation, things like that. So, confidential information is still very important to keep it secure. It just has less legal implications than the PII does. And then the last main category of data is public data. And that's information that is intended to be used by anyone outside your business. So that could be public filings with the government that get published. It could be your own marketing materials, things of that nature. So public information, we generally want to make sure that it is secured so that it can't be replicated and somebody could imitate your information, but locking it down isn't as critical. So what we're going to talk about today is these top two categories, the personally identifiable information, PII, and the confidential information, because those are the types of information that you're going to be sending to us on a regular basis. And then we're also going to be sending back to you on a regular basis. So we want to make sure that we understand how that information is being secured. So that leads us into then what's known as the data chain. So the data chain starts with the sender's network. So you have some data. It lives on a disk. We call that data at rest. Anytime you're accessing it on a computer, it's known as data in use. And then the last piece is whenever you're actually sending the data, it's in transit. So these three pieces are the side of the chain that belongs to the sender. So whenever you are sending us an email, or if we're sending you an email, we're the sender, and our structure looks like this. The next piece of the data chain is the internet. We have to get the data to each other somehow, and the main way that we do that these days is the internet. And that's the data in transit element. So it's somewhere in the cloud being sent from email servers to email servers or on file servers across the internet. The last piece is the recipients network, and you'll see that this looks pretty similar to the senders network, except that it's instead of sending data, receiving it. We have our data in use, we have our data at rest. It is important that everything on both sides of the chain be encrypted, and that's where Dfinity spends money to make sure that your data, while it lives on our servers, is safe and people can't get to it. And you should also be making sure that while the data is on your servers, people can't get to it. But what do we do about this bit? The internet, the part that we don't really have a lot of control over. It's just out there hitting servers, and who knows what's going on with it. Well, that's where we investigated options, and we came up with ShareFile, also known as Citrix files, as a solution to address this middle section of the data chain. So let's break this down. We have the middle section here. And why did we choose ShareFile? Well, when we or you send files, they get sent over an encrypted upload. So the entire time that the file is in transit to Citrix, that chain is encrypted. Additionally, while it's at Citrix, it's encrypted on their servers. And lastly, while you're downloading them, it's an encrypted download. So we're keeping all three pieces encrypted. So let's talk about what encryption is. Essentially, it is the process of converting data from a readable or plain text format into an unreadable or ciphertext format using what's known as an encryption key. The ciphertext is going to be useless without the encryption key. As an example, this is what's known as I'm going to give you an example of a simple substitution encryption. If you were to steal this information from me, it wouldn't do you any good because you don't know what this means. However, if you knew the encryption key, which is that this was a +1 substitution, then you would reverse it by using a -1 substitution. So you take one away from each of these letters and you get the message, hello. It's essentially a secret decoder ring like a spy would use, but we're doing it on a substantially more complicated process to convert all of your data into random ones and zeros that don't make any sense unless you have the really long encryption key. So the encryption keys, the industry standard right now is 128-bit key. And I won't bore you with all the technical details of what's involved in that, but we are moving to double that across the industry to 256-bit. As various services and sites get updated, we're moving to 256-bit. But essentially, that just means that it's a much longer encryption key. So the procedure by which your real data, plain text data, is converted into ciphertext data is a much more complicated procedure. And the reason we're doing that, and these numbers here that I'm about to show you are going to be a little stunning, but right now, the time that it takes modern day computers to crack a 128-bit encryption is approximately 2.61 trillion years. Now, this is not taking into account advances in technology. Computers obviously get faster over time, so this number continues to go down rapidly as computers get faster. It's still a very large number, but as it's going down, we realize that it's important to continue improving security, which is why we're now switching to 256-bit, and that takes approximately 229 nonillion years. Now, nonillion is probably not a word that you've ever heard before, and it looks like this. That's a lot of zeros. And just to kind of put this number in a bit of perspective, they estimate that the age of the universe is around 14 billion years. This number right here, yeah, it's 16 septillion times longer than the estimated length of the entire universe so far. So this is 256-bit. It's pretty good security. It's going to take a long time for someone to crack it if they're trying to breach. So now that we kind of have talked about what data is, what the data chain is, and why encryption is important, we're going to talk about how to actually use the service that we're using, the ShareFile option, to get data to us. So the two main options are to click a link, which there's a couple ways that you can get the link. One is if you know that you need to send us a file, you can ask us, any one of our employees, and they can get you a link sent to you that you can click on to securely upload that confidential or PII information. The other option for clicking a link is Dfinity email signatures. We've been rolling out updated email signatures that have a little lock icon in them. When you click on that lock, it will take you to our share file page where you can then upload a file. And the advantage of having it in the email signature is that you get a lot of emails from us. So it should be pretty easy to find that. We're also working on getting it up on our website. So once we have it up on the website, you'll also have a static place that you can go to. Every time you go to the website, it's just there. You can click it and send a file. That would be the not the recommended way to get about it, because the other two options are more targeted, being delivered to the person you want it delivered to. But the Dfinity website option would allow you to get a file. We'll figure out who it needs to get to. Just might add some processing time. The other main option outside of clicking a link is what's known as FTP. That's File Transfer Protocol. So there are software tools that can be installed on your computers or your servers that allow you to automate the process of getting files from something and then sending those files across the internet to ShareFile. So if you are currently using something like that, like if you have automated payroll processing, things of those nature, where you need to get files to us on a regular recurring basis and they're generated in some kind of an automatic way, contact us and we can work with you on getting that set up to use ShareFile as the go-between to get that data from you to us. Let's talk about the links. I just have some couple examples here. So the first example we have, this is my email signature. So when I say get a link, if you were to request one, I could send you an email. It would look like this, and you would have this little box right here. It just says click here to upload files. If you click on that, it'll take you to the share file site, and you can upload the file. The other option, like I mentioned, is the send me files securely option, which is going to be embedded in most or all email signatures at Dfinity before too long here. And that'll take you to the same place as this, but it won't be customized. So when you click on one of those links, you're going to get to a landing page. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because this fun little box down here called Remember Me. We recommend you check that. That way you don't have to enter this information in every time you send a file to us. We do request that this information get filled out as a requirement to upload files, and that's for a couple of purposes. One is just to make it easier to audit files when they come in, so we know who sent them to us. If stuff comes in anonymously, then we have to treat it with more suspicion and it takes more time to process. The other reason is just so that you then also get email notifications back whenever we've accessed the file that you've sent to us. So it works both ways. We have an audit trail knowing that you've sent us a file and we've been notified of it, and then you also can get notifications back letting you know that we have received your file and have downloaded it. We also, depending on the nature of the files going on, we can also set it up so that you will have an actual ShareFile account that you would have a username and password for, as opposed to just having to provide information. We use that in certain cases where there's the FTP automation going on. You'll probably wind up having to have an account set up, but that's once it's set up and configured, it just runs. All right, so once you get through this, the other thing I wanted to talk about was when you're uploading files, you can either drag them in from your computer. You can click on the Browse Files button to get a file explorer and go navigate for them. But the important thing to remember is that after you've put files in here, it'll just as many files as you want. You can drag them in here and it'll keep building the list. You want to make sure you hit the upload button because if you just close the tab, it won't send any files to us. So make sure you hit that upload button. All right. Okay, so that's sending files to us. That's kind of what it looks like when you are trying to send files to us, clicking those links. The other end, though, is we use ShareFile to send files to you. And so what's that going to look like? It's mostly going to be an email. You're going to get an email from us. It's going to have a little section like this that says Citrix attachments or ShareFile. It will have a download attachment button, which you can click on to launch the website. It will also have this HTML attachment, which does the same thing as clicking the button. For some users, for your email system, the attachment will work better than the button. That's why it sends both. Once you click on either of these, you're going to get a very similar looking page where you're going to input information about who you are, check the box, and then that'll take you into the website where you then can retrieve the files. There's a download button at the top. There's also a download button or a print button here. The download button at the top is useful for downloading multiple files at a time, whereas this download button, the lower one, is going to pull down a single file at a time, print a single file at a time. So if we uploaded a bunch of things, you can collectively download them. So that's the new way that we are using to send and receive secure information. And this is kind of on a ad hoc basis, as opposed to our regular ongoing data collection process that we might be familiar with. At the end of every year, we collect the census data and the questionnaires. That kind of information will still continue to be collected through the myretirementaccounts.com site, which Christine will be going over our upcoming presentation right after mine. So that website won't be changing. But this new thing allows more easy access to sending and receiving files to Dfinity, while keeping the data incredibly secure. And that was the main reason we went out and selected ShareFile, was because of ease of use while also having incredibly strong security. All right, and then I think we are now ready for questions.
I have a question, Philip.
Yes.
So you talked about the kind of information that includes personally identifying, right? But could you go one step further? We're going to talk about census, but I suspect there's other kind of information that everybody may want to consider using the Citrix file. So maybe detail it a little bit. Give us an example of what kind of stuff they should be sending to Dfinity for securely.
Yeah. So, like I said, obviously the direct PII, you always want to send secure. That's an always type deal. But even when you start getting into, let's say you are filling out distribution paperwork for participants, that's always going to contain some kind of PII on it, both direct and indirect. There's certain types of part of our annual data collection. There's some things going on in there. Even just draft data. Let's say you're looking to get projections done, and you're sending compensation estimates, and it's just a file with comp numbers on it. That kind of information isn't necessarily going to damage your business if it gets out, but it could make your employees unhappy if one of them gets a hold of that, and it comes through and they see, and they say, oh, here I am, I'm lower down the list than I thought I was in terms of total comp. That's never a good thing to have happen. So having your information, there's the legal stuff with the PII, and then there's the business impact stuff with things that you want to keep confidential, that you don't have a legal obligation to do so, but you have a business reason to keep it confidential.
Yeah. So maybe when in doubt, use Citrix. Use the file.
Yeah. In general, it just makes sense that if you're sending files, it just makes sense to send it via share file. That way you don't have to worry about whether something in it should have been confidential or encrypted. It just will be. And realistically, the amount of time it takes to upload a file on ShareFile is the same amount of time as it takes to attach a file to an email. You instead of just dragging and dropping in the email and hitting send, you just drag and drop into the ShareFile window and hit upload. So it from a time saving standpoint, it's the same as sending an email back and forth. But sending it via a secured method keeps your information from being exposed.
Right. And that's what this whole day is about, is keeping data safe, both in on your systems and in transit, and how we keep it safe too. Thank you, Philip.
So I do see a question has come in.
Yeah.
I'll answer this live. So we have a question that says, the firm already uses share file. Can we initiate the encryption, expiration of file transfer, access credentials, et cetera, or does Dfinity prefer responding to a Dfinity link to upload? So yeah, if your firm is already using share file, feel free to send us files using your share file. We'll probably send files back to you using our share file, just because that's what's been integrated into our Outlook. And obviously, when you're sending us files, it's integrated into your Outlook, so it makes it easier for you over there as well. And that's fine. Our users are being trained on what to look for on links. So whenever we get a link, we're working on making sure that everyone knows how to check for phishing. So we'll be able to look at the link and see that, yes, this is a legitimate share file link. We can click on it and pull it down. So yes, that's a good question. Yes, if you've already got it, go for it. Let's see, I had, let's see, there was another question that I thought I saw come through. There's a question about faxes. That's a good question. So faxing, is faxing secure? The short answer is no. There are a lot of digital fax options out there now, and large sections of the fax transmission process can be encrypted. But the problem is that no matter how you send it or who you send it to, at some point in time, your fax transmission is going to leave an encrypted environment and it's going to hit a phone line. And that part where it's on the phone line, it's being transmitted in an unencrypted format. Now, granted, most people are probably not sitting out, most hackers are not sitting out there throwing a line over top of the phone line in order to intercept everything. But if they know that you are engaged in financial activity, then they could be targeting you, in which case they would do something like that. So fax transmissions should never be considered secure. And I know that there are some requirements that things be faxed. Some entities still work exclusively in the fax world. If you can send the items to those companies in another format, you should. Obviously, we accept faxes here because we know that sometimes people are working in an environment where that's the only method that they have to send data. But our strong recommendation is to send everything via an encrypted format like share file, not through fax, and to use fax only as an absolute last resort. It should not be your go-to. All right, do we have any other questions? Let's see, well, there was one about files with passwords. Okay, so you could put a password on a file. I know Microsoft Office allows you to add passwords to your files. Adobe can allow you to add passwords to your files, both for opening and editing the files. And some other programs do as well. So adding a password to a file is more about user access than it is about data protection. And the reason I say that is because I can go on the internet in the next 10 minutes, download a program that I can put your password protected file into, and it will remove that password without me having to do anything. So it is, password protecting files is about keeping people inside your environment, trustworthy people inside your environment, from opening things they're not supposed to. It really doesn't help prevent somebody who's stolen your files from getting into those files. Because while there is technically a degree of encryption involved, because it's file level encryption in that file, it's very easy to crack it out and break it, because the password to open it has to be stored inside that file. And so it's just it's a very simplistic matter to write code that will pull that password out, unhash it, and use it. So yeah, password protecting, like I said, is useful for user access with people you trust to not try to hack it. So yeah, again, encryption is the correct choice for keeping your data out of the hands of people who shouldn't have it. Okay. And I don't see any other questions. So I think that'll be the end of my session, and we can welcome Christine.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am going to get my presentation up here, and I appreciate everybody listening this morning about securely sending your census as well as preparing it. I know that it's a thing that everybody dreads, but it's the most important piece of information for us to put together all of your annual work. So let me start here. There we go. Perfect. All right, so just a little bit of what we're going to discuss this morning. We're going to go over how to log on to our secure website. And like Philip had mentioned previously in his discussion, we use our secure website for transmission of the annual data request information, i.e. census, our form, going back and forth, statements if needed, W-2s if needed, that sort of information every year. I'm sorry, yes.
Christine, it's Elke, sorry. I'm not sure that we're seeing your screen, so we may need to. That's all right. The Zoom technology and choosing the right monitor and using the right screen so that everybody can see, it's a whole nother technical skill. In fact, I'm pretty sure that by the end of this, we will have everybody certified as Zoom users. So yeah, we're getting closer there. There you go.
All right.
Fantastic.
Got it. I told Elke earlier, just so everybody knows, I blame it on the coffee. So we're just going to go with that today. All right. So back to the agenda. The secure website is also used as a place for us to upload your end of the year annual reports, any plan documents or anything such that we prepared that year for you so that you may go out to the secure website and pull that down. We are obviously going to go over the actual census request, where to start if you're brand new or just want a great refresher, what to include on the census, and then my favorite topic, but they're only part-time. So we're going to talk about considered part-time employees and why that is going to be a topic that you're going to want to pay attention to going forward if you don't already. And then finally, we're going to talk about securely uploading your census, again, where you go to log in, and if you forgot your user ID and password. So let's go ahead and start with our secure website. There's two different ways that you can access this website. Most of you have seen before, we send out an annual data request every year at the year end of the plan we'll be working on, requesting all that wonderful information that is repeated from year to year that we love to get from you. In this email, there is an embedded secure website link. You can click on that link and it directly takes you to our secure website. Here you'll see the logon screen. You'll input your user ID as well as your password to log in, and then you will go to our landing page. The other way that you can access our secure website is through Dfiniti's website. If you go out to Dfinity.com, up on the right-hand side, you'll see a tab that basically says account access. And if you click on that and drop down, you will choose the employer compliance. This also will take you directly to our secure website. So if that annual data request email for some reason, didn't get through to you, was, got lost in your emails, because Lord knows we have a lot of those, you can always go out to our website and access our secure website from there as well. So we want to give you both of those options. And we will get into getting your user ID and your password. So never fear, we will talk about that. So let's just assume right now everybody knows their user ID and password. Once you put that in, a box will click up and it will ask you who you are. So basically you're going to check the plan sponsor, because you're the plan sponsor, hit submit. It's going to take you to our landing page. And on this landing page up at the top, you'll select the Administrative Services tab, and then click on Plan Documents and Reports to find everything that you'll need for the current plan year end. When you click, you'll click on the applicable year end to what we're working on for this. So for instance, we will be sending out the request for the 12/31/2021 plan year end shortly for December plan year ends. You'll click on that plan year end and you should see files available for download that we've put out there for you. And it should say specifically download the census to begin. If for some reason it's not there, I'm going to say this a million times today, please please contact your retirement plan consultant. That is what we're here for. We would be most happy to direct you to make sure that it's put on there and you're in the right place looking for the right item. So once you have the census and it's downloaded, it'll be in an Excel spreadsheet format. And if you're a previous client, it should already be pre-filled with last year's basic census data. Should have the social security numbers you provided, all of the employees' names, dates of birth, dates of hire, dates of termination, and dates of rehire from the previous plan year end. What that means to you, less input. So you'll just go through and you'll, add new dates of hire, add new employees, so on and so forth. If you have a brand new plan or you're a brand new client, welcome. And unfortunately, the first time you're going to need to input this census, all of this information. And yes, it can be tedious, we know, but once again, this is the starting point for us to do all of our compliance work. So while it's tedious, it's very important that we get the best information possible, the most accurate information possible for you. I just want to stop and pause here for a second. I know many clients use an outside payroll source, such as Paychex, Paylocity, online QuickBooks. A lot of these payroll providers have a spreadsheet or a report that should be available for download to you with all of that census information encompassed. It may not be in our format, but it's a lot easier for you to request it or to pull that census and upload it to us in lieu of filling out our spreadsheet versus sending W-2s and having us transcribe and input all that information. The less human contact we all have with all this information, the less errors we have. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Hopefully it'll be a 0.0001 mistake if it's made. But if you have the availability to pull that report from your payroll company, we'll gladly take that as well, as long as it's in a Excel, some type of format that we can transfer over. If you have any questions for that, it's not our specialty. Obviously, we're not a payroll company, but I'm sure that your plan consultant might be able to direct you. You'll call somebody at your payroll company and see if that option is available with whatever package you have. I just wanted to throw that out there. So, what to include? I could talk about census all day. I'd love to hear myself talk. So I'm going to say some things that are probably pretty remedial and repetitive, but here we go. All of our system, our compliance system tracks this data information. And this is huge for us because this is how we keep you in compliance. So it's important that all of this census information, as much as possible, be given to us so that we can accurately track everything. Full social security numbers, those really are needed towards the end of the participant's life in the plan per se, or if they're taking a distribution or some type of withdrawal or loan, we'll need that social security number for verification at the place that holds the assets for the plan. Full names of all employees, and I'll get into that a little bit down the line here. And most clients that I work with are very, very good at just giving us that whole rundown. And here again, if you have availability to pull a census report from your payroll company, it will pull everybody. It's becoming much more apparent that, full-time versus part-time, there's some lines that we're very separative in this, and they're coming together. So we do need a whole list, even if you feel that they're only seasonal or part-time, of the employees. Their dates of birth, their dates of hire, their dates of termination, and importantly, my last tab here is dates of rehire. Many companies have different projects or different times of the year when they have seasonal employees or extra employees come on and help. They may work on a project, they're terminated, and then maybe 3 months later they come back. This is fine, but if you do have rehires, please provide us the latest or the most recent rehire date. we will ask questions, when we receive the census based on the census from last year. So not trying to be the little principal here and tell you you're going to have a slap in the hand. That's not the case. But this is our job is to go through and scrub the census and ask you these questions to make sure, once again, we have the most accurate data as possible. Some companies are large enough or have different locations. If this is applicable, you'll give us the location of the company per which census you're sending. I want to stop and talk a little bit about this officers and owners, along with the ownership percent. This may seem silly to some or confusing, but this is very important to us to help determine who the highly compensated or the HCEs are, as well as who the keys are for the company. As most of you know, HCEs and keys drive our testing, right? And that's how we keep you in compliance with the non-discrimination testing. I'm going to oversimplify a lot of things here, but every year we just need to verify, John Black is the 100% owner of X company. The next year it might be John Black is 49% owner and Sally Sue is the 51% owner. It's important to us, as well as listing who the spouses and children are. I know in some of the previous sessions this week, they talked about, not directly attribution, but there's attribution rules that go down for who the HC and the keys are for the company. This is a base point for us to determine who that is, and we'll work with you one-on-one to make sure that we have the applicable information we need. Another thing, this isn't on my point, but I did also want to bring up on our data request sheet. I know this is not census related. I'll get there, I promise. If the owners that are listed, or officers that are owners and officers that are listed for the company, the current company we have the plan for, own another company, it's important that we get that information as well. And that's something that's not necessarily presented or on the forefront of your mind when you're doing the census. But it's important to realize or try to remember that if the owner, let's say, owns another company, is 100% owner of another company, and they may or may not have direct relation with whatever the company does has the plan, those employees, if he has employees in that other company, would be considered to be eligible if they meet the criteria for this plan. And so it's important for us to know if there are any other companies that we should be asking questions about to make sure that we're covering, the right employee base for the plan and keeping it in compliance. I know I'm going to be going over a lot, so please, if you do have any questions, like I said, it's going to be more of a broad overview, and that pretty much is because every document, once we get into like the different types of compensation, which is my next tab, it might be different for each company, for each company's plan. And so I would much rather speak with you, or your plan consultant after the fact to make sure that we're giving you the correct information based on your adoption agreement and what it states in there. So the next tab is gross compensation. So total gross compensation, there's 3 different types of compensation that we use that are within the plan document and so that is the W-2 comp, the 3401A wages, or the 415 compensation. And depending on what is listed in your adoption agreement and checked, there are different things to include and not include in this compensation. Many of you probably have already had this discussion at one point in time. I'm not going to go into what is included and excluded because it's a very vast and long list, but this is something that we would also go over with you as a plan consultant to make sure that you're providing us, or if we need that information and we see that it's marked, we'll verify with you. So bear with us. We're not trying to, be annoying, a pain in the side, but we want to make sure that we have, like I said, over and over again, the most accurate information as possible. Also, that is earned income for a K1, Schedule C earnings, line 31, before any tax deductions. So compensation is huge, and we'll be happy as the plan consultant for your case to go over what that entails. If you've got any questions at all, please call us. We would much rather you call us when you're filling this out and help you with it than have you be frustrated and have to go back a lot of times to try and find and pull information. There's another tab that talks about excluded compensation on my slides. This is another area in the plan document that is marked where for certain tests, we can exclude certain types of compensation. Some plan documents don't exclude anything. Others exclude certain things like fringe benefits, HCE compensation, different benefit packages that might be available to only certain HCEs in the company. If your plan excludes any specific compensation, it'll be in that adoption agreement. And once again, we're happy to go over that with you as well. I know that this is what we do for our livelihood and we love it. I like to say that we're pension geeks, but this isn't something that you're going to focus on every day because you have a million other things to do. So we understand that when you're preparing your census, you may look at something and go, what is that again? So please feel free to call us. I know that the beginning of your plan, your calendar year is very, very busy, just like it is for us, but we'll be happy to take some time out and help you with any questions you have on compensation. And then the last on this slide is participation compensation. Basically, there's two boxes on the plan adoption agreement. When a participant becomes eligible to be in the plan dictates whether you will use full year's compensation or only compensation from the point that they enter the plan. This is important to you as a plan sponsor because if your plan has participant compensation, what you will be contributing that first year likely will be less, obviously, because it'll be less compensation versus the full year of compensation. So this is something that we internally will go through. And if we don't see, if we see somebody should have entered 7/1 and we don't have that compensation as of that date, we'll send you an email and we'll request that information for you. As always, we're available for any questions, but most of the time, like I said, if we don't see it, we'll go ahead and we'll email you for that and that information. Actual hours worked. I know that several companies have, salaried employees, which definitely work over 1,000 hours. A lot of time the owners of the company work way more than 1,000 hours. But it's become very important because of the Secure Act and a regulation that passed that all hours be tracked. Before it was important, but now it's become a forefront, and I'll get into that here shortly. So it's important that you put actual hours worked. If you don't track the salary people and they work over 1,000, you can put 1,001. But for your other ancillary employees that maybe work under 1,000, you'll need to start tracking how many hours or find a method to track how many hours that they've worked. The 401k deferrals, obviously, that's part of your payroll. So that'll need to be put in the census. That's part of how we match up what you told us that you withheld and what was withheld and what was at the institution that holds the assets. Any employer matching contributions, if applicable, and any other contributions that were made during the plan year. This just gives us once again, a stepping point to say, okay, I see they've done the Safe Harbor employer contributions. I have also seen that they've done X. If we have any questions, we can start from there. And we're trying to get all of this information in one foul swoop, so we're not sending you a million emails throughout the next following weeks. My favorite topic, but they're only part-time. So like I mentioned before, a lot of companies will hire seasonal, they'll have different projects that they hire and terminate and rehire people for. And in the past, the adoption agreement allowed you to say, it's going to exclude any, specific types of people. And then if they didn't meet the eligibility to get in the plan, whether it be elapsed time 3 months or whether it be 1 year of service and 1,000 hours, those part-time, as many of us usually refer to them, employees just weren't eligible to ever enter the plan. And in my 20 years plus of doing administration and consulting, I know that for a lot of companies that they weren't usually included, especially if they only work, let's just say, 500 hours or, 20 hours. So this is changing. The Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement, which is our SECURE Act, changes how we view our part-time employees or those employees that are not salary or full-time over 1,000. So I'm going to state a few facts, and then I encourage you to attend the session tomorrow. Our ERISA attorney Brooke is going to be speaking about this in more detail, so I'm not going to take her thunder, but the new regulation for these part-time employees are companies, if you're not already doing so, you're going to need to start tracking those actual hours worked for all employees. As I stated earlier and just now, it's going to become very, very important that you do so, because employees who have worked between 500 and 999 hours for the last 3 consecutive years are going to be able to participate in your 401k plan. Before you get all excited, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the earliest that any employee could enter the plan and defer is going to be in 2024, okay? But the tracking starts in 2021. They are only going to be eligible to participate in the deferral, the 401k deferral portion of the plan. So any other employer contribution that you make to the plan, these rules are not subject to that. So they won't get safe harbor contributions. They won't get any profit sharing contributions. They won't get any employer matching contributions if you have that and you do that on an annual basis, if those particular rules haven't been met. So translation is, it's actually good for your ADP test to allow these other participants, if they should choose to defer in. It's going to increase your deferral percentage for the people who are deferring in your plan. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just going to be a different view of looking at who you give the SPD to, who you give an enrollment form to. Because before, you may not have considered those seasonal people as employees that could be eligible to participate in the plan. Whereas starting in 2024, if they've consistently worked, let's say 600 hours, give or take, for the last 3 years, come 2024, they're going to be able to enter whatever your entry dates are to participate in the 401k deferral part. So also, it could be used as a great incentive for those seasonal employees to, come back and continue to do projects for you, because they have an opportunity to put money into a great retirement plan. It's a great benefit. So as I stated in tomorrow's session with our ERISA attorney, she's going to go into a lot of more detail. So I would strongly suggest that you log on and listen to what she has to say about this regulation and how it will work within the adoption agreement. So now we're going to go to securely uploading your census. And I will just go ahead and state, I'm not Philip, I'm not a technical guru, but I do know a few basic facts about how to keep everything safe. So where to go again? Once again, within that annual data request that we send every year, there's going to be a secure link that when you click on it, it's going to take you directly to the logon page for our secure website. You can also go onto Dfinity.com and you can go to Account Access Employer Compliance, and then you can get to that same logon screen. Once you're there, you're going to see a little lock on the website address bar up at the top. This means that the website connection is secure. I know it's remedial information, but it's so super important. And hopefully many of you know this from other transactions that you do with other, banking account sites and so on and so forth. Same thing here. Any information that's uploaded or downloaded to our website is private when you're using this site. Once that lock appears, and anybody can jump in on my side if I'm incorrect here. But if you don't see that lock, please, please, please do not upload anything and call us immediately, because something is not right and it's not secure to do so. I have put on my slide, you can always email us at Gemini@Dfinity-LLC.com. That's also listed on the logon page, as well as I believe in the email that we send. Or as always, please call your retirement plan consultant. That's what we're here for. If you're having issues with anything, if something doesn't look right, call us. We may not have the answer right away, but we can get you in touch with somebody who can get it correct. We would much rather have you send everything secure and you feel good about it, versus you just sending it because you're under a deadline. I want to make sure that everybody understands this whole day is talking about cybersecurity and how important that information is. And you should feel very confident and very comfortable with providing this information to us with all of the different securities that we have set up in place. We know it's very important to you. We want you to know that we take our absolute best care to make sure that that stays securely, safely with us once it gets to us, and any form, whether it be the secure website or whether it be on share file. And it's always good practice, and Philip had mentioned this as well, not to send any sensitive or private information through the general email. If you're not on a secure site, there is possibility that somebody could, hack into the information or grab that, and that's the last thing you want to have happen. So, if you're having problems with the secure website, you could also upload something to us through share file if you're in dire need to get us something securely right away. But I would encourage you to call your retirement plan consultant as well. We want to make sure that you have that secure connection with us and you can access it at any time to get any information that you guys need. So please, please, please do not ever hesitate to call us. We are here for you. That is our job. So once you have entered your user ID and your password, it's going to pop up another screen. And like I mentioned way earlier in the conversation, you're going to select plan sponsor. And once you hit submit, it's going to take you to what we call our landing page. Now, to submit your census or your file, you're going to select administrative services again, but you're going to select the census and file upload. When you do that, there's going to be a section where it allows you to select the file type from the drop-down box that you will be sending to us for that census information, whether it be an Excel spreadsheet, whether it's a PDF, whether it's in Word. It's going to allow you to tell us what type of file that you're going to be uploading to us. After you've selected that, you are going to hit submit, and we're automatically going to be notified that something securely has been submitted to us using this secure process. It automatically, right away tells us, Sally Sue has sent a secure file through our secure website for your viewing. So if you would like to verify that, you can always, email or call your plan consultant, but please be aware, anything that's ever securely sent through that website, automatically we're notified. So we know that you've put something out there important for us to do for your work. And if you've forgotten your user ID or password, there's a couple different ways. You can email the Gemini@Dfinity-LLC.com once again to request your user ID or password or both be sent to you again. You can call us at the 800-882-4026, option number 2, and speak to somebody, or I sound like a broken record, you may always call your plan consultant. We can help you get that information if it's been changed, if it needs to be changed. We're here. We're here for you. We would love to help you. A lot of times this is sent to the main contact. If that main contact has changed, you may not know the user ID or password. please feel free to use one of these methods or give your plan consultant a call so that we can get you that information so you can reach the secure website. I think I am at the end of my slides. And I see that we have a question. Oh, okay. The question came in, and I believe this is in regards to the Secure Act that passed for the part-time employees. Is that per year or total of the 3 years for the part-time employees? That's a good question. So the employee would need to work every year for the prior 3 years, anywhere between 500 and 999 hours. So it's each year. So it's not the total, it's each year they'd have to work that. And I'm sure that Brooke will go into much further detail tomorrow when she discusses this, because this is an important point for a lot of people, especially since this is the remedial statement period. There are a lot of things to consider, especially if you're a larger client and have a lot of employees. So it's something to be aware of that you can ask questions on to see if this is, how this will best work for you and the plan. Does anybody else have any questions? I covered quite a bit. Let's see.
So I think you got a question in the chat as well.
Yeah. Will be provided. Will the instruction be provided when you go to the landing page? I believe there is something on the landing page. If there isn't, we do have other things that we can give you. And I believe in the email itself, there's a lot of explanation about where to go and what to get. So if you have any questions, if something's not there that you can't see and you need further information on, please let us know, because we've got lots of documentation. Elke provides us with a lot of information, and they're plan consultants. We know this inside and out. So it should be there. But if it's not, please call.
The big lesson for today. If you don't know the answer, call your RPC.
Yes, please. We would much rather.
Yeah, the RPCs that I've had the pleasure to connect with and work with here are really helpful. So be sure to reach out to them. And I loved your point too, Christine, about sometimes with the plan sponsor, that plan contact may have changed. So if you do have a change on your side, plan sponsors, let us know so that we can keep that information updated as well. Sometimes that's a good reason you might not have your user ID and password to access and log in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've answered that question. Okay, thank you so much, Christine, and to Philip, and to Tom, and to Terry. As you go on the rest of the day, it sounds like there's still a lot of questions about the part-time, long-term part-time employees. And Christine, you did a great job of promoting Brooke's presentation tomorrow. She is our go-to for that kind of stuff. So if you had questions specific about that, please come back tomorrow and make sure that you have a chance to do that. The other reason that I would tell you to come back tomorrow is all of the DC and DB admin. So that's all of our defined contribution. If you have a 401k or if you have a cash balance plan, all of the managers who are really overseeing and really help all of the RPCs. Your RPC has a manager. They will be taking part in a study hall where we're going to stump them with questions that we have gotten throughout the year, questions that you may have asked them, or if you have a question that comes up, you can send that to events@definity-llc.com, and we will ask them in the study hall session. So that's a great way to kind of hear some best practices and tips. They'll be sharing their ideas, and you'll get some FaceTime with the people who directly manage your plan. So that would be a great one to go. I think I see another part-time question here. So let's see if we can tackle that real quick. Christine, do you see that one there?
Correct. If you have a part-time employee that has already met eligibility for your plan, status quo, nothing will change. It's for those employees who may have worked, let's say, 800 hours the first year they were with you. And then they worked, 100 hours the next year because there wasn't a project or something for them to do. And their hours fluctuate. These are the employees that have never met the eligibility requirements for your plan. So those are the ones that it's specifically going to impact. So the ones that have already met that, and you could have different eligibility for deferrals and for employer contributions as well. So if that employee is already participating and has met the the eligibility for that source, they're fine. Nothing will change with that. It's only the ones who have not met the current eligibility that we'll be tracking the hours for and looking at.
Perfect. I'm glad we were able to take care of that one today. And, just another primer. Come tomorrow.
Yes,
Make
please.
sure that you
Please.
get, that's right. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Christine. Thanks for sharing your tips on census and all of that information. It's been really helpful. So we'll close for today. As I said, be sure to sign up for tomorrow. It's the last day of our 401k class. And we are very thankful that you all have participated. Obviously, you're invested in helping us help you do the best job that we can in maintaining and administering and keeping your plan compliant. And that's the best part. So we're glad you're here. Thank you for participating today. And we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Bye, everybody.
Bye.